She almost didn't open the door. Rain pelted the roof, thunder cracked, but something in her heart told her this stranger wasn't just lost, he was meant to be found. A violent storm rolled over Willow Ridge, flooding fields and battering rooftops. Inside the small farmhouse, 29-year-old Lila Morgan stirred a pot of stew while her aging mother, Clara, sat knitting quietly by the fire. When the knock came, it wasn't forceful. It was hesitant, uncertain, like a plea. Lila glanced at Clara, who raised her brows but nodded. With an old lantern in hand, Lila stepped onto the porch, the rain instantly soaking her lavender house dress and sticking her brown curls to her face. Standing before her was a man, tall, drenched, and rough around the edges. His coat was torn, his boots mud-caked, and his hat barely clung to his head. He looked around 33, with dark stubble shadowing his strong jaw and sorrow buried deep in his pale green eyes. "Ma'am," he rasped, "I don't need much, just a place out of the rain for the night." Lila hesitated. Something about him didn't sit right, but not in a threatening way. It was more like grief. Clara's voice from behind her made the decision. "The barn's dry, let him stay." Clara handed Lila a thick quilt, and together they led the cowboy through the downpour to the weathered barn. As he stepped inside, he glanced around the old structure with reverence, as if barns were sacred. "This'll do just fine," he murmured, clutching the blanket tightly. Lila watched him lay down on a bed of hay, exhaustion overtaking him. His breathing steadied. He didn't ask for food, didn't ask for anything. She noted the calluses on his hands, the way his clothes clung too loosely, as if he'd lost weight fast. She returned to the farmhouse with questions dancing in her head. Who was he? Why did he look like he'd been running forever? Clara just said. "Some men carry storms inside them. Best to let them quiet down before you ask too much." That night, as the thunder softened, Lila watched the barn from her window, feeling something shift deep in her chest. The storm passed by dawn, leaving behind a thick mist clinging to the fields. Lila stepped out early with warm cornbread and coffee, unsure why she felt drawn to check on the stranger. He was awake, already mucking out the barn's far corner, sleeves rolled to reveal lean, muscular arms. His clothes were still damp, but he moved with quiet determination. When she called out, he turned with a polite nod. "Thought I'd earn my keep," he said. Lila handed him the breakfast without a word. He accepted it gently, eyes meeting hers for the first time in daylight, pale green, yes, but rimmed with something deeper. Guilt, maybe. "Name's Wade," he finally said. "Wade Carter." She gave a small nod. "Lila Morgan. That's my mother, Clara." Clara appeared beside her with her cane, squinting at Wade with curiosity. "You know how to fix fences, Wade," he smiled faintly. "I can try." Something unspoken passed between them, an agreement. He would stay a while, and none of them realized how much that choice would change their lives. Over the next few days, Wade worked as if the farm were his own. He repaired the south fence, patched the roof over the chicken coop, and even got the old water pump running again. Lila found herself watching him through the kitchen window more than she cared to admit. There was a patience in his movements, a quiet care, as if each nail he drove in steadied something inside him. Clara seemed to take a liking to Wade quickly. She often brought out lemonade or asked his help gathering eggs. He responded with steady kindness, never pushing, never prying. One evening, while they all sat on the porch watching the sun dip beneath the hills, Wade asked softly, "You run this place all on your own?" Lila nodded, arms crossed. "Ever since my father passed, it's not much, but it's ours." "And the bookstore?" he asked without looking at her. She blinked. "What bookstore? You talk in your sleep," he replied with a small grin. "Said something about shelves and ink and windows that face the sun." She turned red. Clara chuckled. "She wanted to open one in town. Always been a dreamer, my Lila." Lila's eyes narrowed playfully. "You just fixed a chicken coop, not my trust." But something flickered in her chest, a memory rekindled, a dream long buried. Days turned into a week, and Lila realized Wade hadn't mentioned where he came from, or where he was going. She'd seen his boots by the door, cracked and worn down to the sole. His coat, patched at the elbows, hung beside hers on the wall. Yet for all the ways he made himself useful, he carried an air of someone who had no roots. One morning, after feeding the goats, Lila caught him staring into the valley, unmoving. She approached quietly. "You all right?" He took a moment before replying. "Sometimes I think the mountains remember more than I do." She frowned. "That a line from one of your books?" He didn't answer. Later that day, while fetching supplies from town, Lila heard something at the market that gave her pause. A man named Carter, wealthy, reclusive, disappeared months ago after a family tragedy. Some speculated he'd gone mad. Others said he'd faked his death. The name chilled her. Wade Carter. Back home, she watched him chop firewood. The name fit him strangely. He didn't carry himself like a man with money. He didn't talk like someone who'd run from privilege. But he did carry something heavy, something that haunted him. She didn't ask him that night, but she would soon. The rhythm of farm life deepened Wade's place in their world. Mornings began with sunrise chores, evenings ended on the porch with quiet stories and Clara's humming. Wade never overstepped, but his presence lingered like the scent of fresh hay, comforting, familiar, inspoken. Lila found herself laughing more, noticing small things, the way his brow furrowed when he concentrated, how he whistled tunelessly when he thought no one was listening, and Wade in turn noticed her too. How her eyes lit up when she talked about old books, how she cradled her coffee mug with both hands when she was deep in thought. One afternoon, while mending the barn door together, their hands brushed. They both froze, the contact electric. Wade cleared his throat, stepping back. Lila pretended to tighten a screw. "It's been a long time since I've worked with someone," he murmured. She glanced up. "Same here." They didn't speak of it again, but from that day on a gentle tension hung between them. Not uncomfortable, just waiting. Later that night, Clara watched them through the screen door and smiled quietly to herself. Sometimes, she whispered to no one, a storm doesn't break something. Sometimes it brings it home. A week later, Wade was gone before sunrise. Lila found his coat still on the hook, but his boots were missing. Panic twisted in her gut. She searched the barn, the field, even checked the creek. She found him by the hill's edge, sitting with a leather wallet in his hands. A faded photo peeked out. 2 boys, a woman, and a man with Wade's face, only younger, cleaner, smiling. He didn't look up when she approached. "That your family?" she asked gently. He nodded slowly. "Used to be." She sat beside him. "I had a brother, we were close. He died in a fire I caused. I was drunk, should have been home, wasn't." Silence settled between them. "I ran," Wade continued. "Didn't even go to the funeral. Didn't want the papers, the money, any of it." Lila laid a hand on his. "You've been punishing yourself ever since." He nodded again, eyes glassy. "They think I'm dead. It's better that way." "It's not," she said firmly. "People don't need perfection, Wade. They just need presence." And for the first time he cried. Not the kind of sobbing that begged for comfort, but quiet, bitter tears that had waited too long to fall. A few mornings later, Lila took Wade to the ridge overlooking the lavender field, her favorite spot since childhood. The sun spilled gold across the rows of soft purple, the scent sweet and heavy in the air. "I used to write stories here," she said. "Tales of knights and castles. I thought I'd be famous one day." "You still could," Wade replied. She shook her head. Too much life got in the way. They sat for a long while, just breathing. Wade reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver ring, not flashy, worn, simple. "It was my mother's," he said. "The only thing I kept." Lila looked at him in surprise. "I know I'm not what you planned for," Wade said. "And I've got a past I haven't fully outrun. But I'd like to build something here with you, if you'll have me." She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she took his hand and slipped the ring on her finger. "Let's take it one day at a time," she whispered. And for the first time since Wade arrived, he smiled fully. No shadows, no reservations, just hope. The next few weeks passed in a quiet, blissful rhythm. Lila and Wade, though still cautious, had settled into a kind of partnership. They didn't call it love, not yet. But every shared glance, every quiet breakfast, every chore done together without words, deepened the roots of something real. Wade helped plow the small east field where Lila wanted to grow wildflowers for the market. In return, she dusted off her old writing journals, setting up a makeshift desk by the window. Clara, too, seemed revitalized. Her laughter returned, as did the piano music from her youth, echoing faintly through the house. Still, Wade hadn't returned to town. He avoided the main roads and bristled when anyone unfamiliar came by. Lila didn't press, but she noticed. She also knew he hadn't spoken to anyone from his past, not even to say he was alive. "You don't have to run anymore," she told him one night. But Wade stared into the fire, expression unreadable. "What if I've forgotten how to stay?" Lila's hand slipped into his. "Then we'll figure it out together." One afternoon, as Lila sorted books in the attic, a knock echoed from the front porch. Firm, official. Clara opened the door to find Sheriff Marlowe, a broad-shouldered man with a skeptical brow. "Evening, Miss Clara. Just making the rounds after that vagrant was spotted in the North Valley." Tall fellow, scruffy, green eyes. "You haven't seen anyone matching that?" Clara hesitated, just long enough to raise suspicion. "No one but us girls here." The sheriff tipped his hat, but lingered. "Just so you know, some folks say that drifter might be Cole Winslow, the missing heir from the Winslow estate. Big inheritance left unclaimed." Clara closed the door slowly after he left. Lila emerged from the attic, heart racing. "Cole Winslow," she whispered. "That's who Wade really is." Clara simply nodded. "And now the law's catching up." When Lila told Wade later, he stiffened. "I thought this place could hide me from all that. I never wanted money again, or attention." "You wanted a life," she said. "That's what you've built here." But she saw it in his eyes, the storm returning. That night, as rain tapped gently on the roof, Wade stood in the barn, arms crossed, the old leather wallet in his hand. Lila entered quietly. "I wasn't going to lie to you," he said, not turning. "But you did." He winced at the hurt in her voice. "I buried Cole Winslow the day I walked out of that mansion," he said. "That man, he let people down, he drank when his brother needed him. He wasted a fortune trying to feel alive. Then he lost everything. Lila approached, steady. And Wade Carter crawled out of that wreckage, built fences, fixed chicken coops, found peace. Silence hung in the barn like mist. I need to know, Lila whispered, if the man in front of me is going to disappear again. Wade turned then, eyes rimmed with quiet anguish. Only if you ask me to. Lila reached for his hand. Then stay, not because you owe it to me, but because this is the life you chose. And in that moment they chose each other all over again. Wade began writing again. Not novels, not confessions, but letters. To his mother, to the brother he lost, to the world he walked away from. He never mailed them, just stacked them in a shoebox beside the barn. One day, Lila found him burning a few of them in the fire pit. Letting go? She asked gently. Trying to, he said. I used to think grief was punishment, but it's not. It's memory. It's proof we loved someone. Lila placed her hand on his chest. It's also proof we're still alive. That night, she sat at her desk and began the first page of a new novel. Not a fantasy or escape, but a story about a man who wandered into a woman's life with a broken past and rebuilt his soul in her lavender fields. Inspired, Lila began revisiting her old plans. With Wade's help, she cleared out the storage barn and painted the walls a soft honey cream. They added bookshelves, chairs, even a little coffee nook. People in this town need more stories, she said. Not just happy ones, real ones. Wade built her a sign by hand, the lavender shelf. Opening day was modest, just neighbors and friends. But the buzz grew quickly. Lila read aloud from her first chapter, her voice steady despite the nerves. Wade stood at the back, arms folded, pride etched on his face. Afterward, Clara whispered to her daughter, "You're not the same girl who gave up her dreams, and he's not the same man who ran from his." On a crisp autumn morning, Wade took Lila back to the lavender ridge. This time the flowers were dry, but the air smelled of wood smoke and earth. He knelt without flourish, holding not a new ring, but the same silver one, polished and warm in his hand. "I didn't know who I was when I asked the first time," he said. "But now I do. I'm Wade Carter, or Cole Winslow. Maybe both. But with you, I'm just a man in love." Lila smiled through tears. "Then let's just be two people who found each other." He slipped the ring on her finger once more, and this time the promise behind it felt whole. A few weeks later, a journalist from the city arrived. Someone had whispered that Cole Winslow was alive, hiding out in the valley. The story broke with quiet thunder. Headlines, speculations, inheritance wars reignited. But Wade didn't flinch. He spoke only once. "I'm not returning to that life. I've got work here. A woman I love, a town that took me in." And surprisingly, the noise faded. Maybe people sensed it wasn't their story to claim anymore. Lila and Wade launched a project, something bigger than their bookstore or barn. They opened a retreat on their land for veterans and trauma survivors, a place to write, to heal, to mend things inside the way fences mend outside. Clara ran the kitchen. Lila taught journaling classes. Wade taught woodworking and silence, the kind that listens. They called it the Second Sunrise. They married beneath an arch of hand-picked wildflowers, guests seated on hay bales, birds singing as if the world knew peace had arrived. Clara officiated, voice strong and clear. "This is not a union of perfect people," she said. "This is a union of healing hearts, of two who found something sacred in each other's brokenness." They said "I do" with hands clasped and eyes full of history. Lila's first novel hit shelves a year later. The Man Who Didn't Want to Be Found became a quiet bestseller, not because of scandal or drama, but because it told the truth. Bookstores across the country carried it. Letters poured in from readers who had lost someone, who had healed, who had been saved by simple love. And yet, Lila still hosted readings on her porch, surrounded by lavender and chickens. When Clara passed, she left behind a note tucked into Wade's wallet. It read, "You weren't lost, you were wandering. Thank you for finding us." They buried her on the ridge where the lavender now bloomed stronger each year. Lila placed a copy of her book beside the headstone. "You started this," she whispered. And Wade, standing beside her, said only, "She saved us both." Years passed. The town grew. The retreat flourished. Children laughed in the bookstore's reading corner. Veterans found peace beside the fields. One night, under a sky scattered with stars, Wade and Lila sat on their porch, hands entwined. "You still dreaming?" he asked. "Every day," she said. And he smiled, knowing now that some storms don't destroy, they lead you home. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable love stories and soulful journeys. Every story begins with one brave choice.